finally, I think Biden is almost getting it. Use every resource you have. The Department of Justice, under the leadership of Merrick Garland, spoke last Friday at a press conference on voting rights. Good. He announced during that presser that there's a federal lawsuit against the state of Georgia. Remember Senate Bill 202, that voter restriction law? That state Senate bill says you can't even bring people a snack or water while they're standing in line. I mean, it makes it a misdemeanor crime. Who needs that to be a misdemeanor? Obviously, people that do not want you to have ease in voting. The 46-page federal court filing is the first major action taken by the Biden administration to confront Republican-led efforts to impose voting restrictions. The governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, responded on Friday via Twitter saying, this lawsuit is born out of the lies and misinformation the Biden administration has pushed against Georgia's Election Integrity Act from the start. Joe Biden, Stacey Abrams, and their allies tried to force an unconstitutional elections power grab through Congress and failed. These guys are good. They're damn good. I mean, literally, the governor of Georgia said that Donald Trump was wrong, that no massive voter fraud took place. The Secretary of State of Georgia, the chief elections officer, Raffensperger, he said on a recorded conversation with then President Trump, no voter fraud took place. Mr. President, your numbers are wrong. And now they're saying, no. Forget about all of that we said back then, you see, because now we have to worry about winning a Republican primary. This is all Stacey Abrams and Congress trying to take away our democracy. They are reforming the message in front of us as we speak. There's another tweet from the good governor. Now they are weaponizing the US Department of Justice to carry out their far left agenda that undermines election integrity and empowers federal government overreach in our democracy. Let's go to the clip.
2 weeks ago, I spoke about our country's history of expanding the right to vote. I noted that our progress on protecting voting rights, especially for Black Americans and people of color, has never been steady. Among other things, I expressed concern about the dramatic rise in state legislative actions that will make it harder for millions of citizens to cast a vote that counts. And I promised that we are scrutinizing new laws that seek to curb voter access, and that where we see violations of federal law, we will act. In keeping that promise, today the Department of Justice is suing the state of Georgia. Our complaint alleges that recent changes to Georgia's election laws were enacted with the purpose of denying or abridging the right of Black Georgians to vote on account of their race or color in violation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
Sue the hell out of them. And yes, this is the right lawsuit. Remember, they got rid of Sunday voting by saying you can't do Saturday and Sunday voting. You have to do either Saturday or Sunday voting. And then they said, no. We're increasing access because now we're saying that all counties must do one or the other. One before, counties had the decision. They were able to make this decision without a state mandate. And counties that are majority Black counties like DeKalb County, Fulton County, Clayton County, and others in the state of Georgia, they made sure that souls to the polls happened, which increased access. How in the hell can you say no to somebody bringing water? Another voter restriction law. And the list goes on and on. Charles, brother, federal lawsuit. They promised this to be the first of many that are coming. I'm glad to see it happening, but still, it's gonna be up to a judge to decide the fate of these laws. What's your legal opinion?
Well, I think in order for us to understand what's going on and what will happen in the courts, we have to go back a little bit because all of this was set in motion by a Supreme Court case that occurred, I wanna say in 2016, if not earlier, Shelby versus Holder. So it may have been 2006. It hasn't been that long. Oh my gosh.
I think it's been that long, brother.
It has been that long. Shelby versus Holder, and these cases were all put in motion by the Supreme Court's very, very unfortunate decision at that time, which gutted parts of the Voting Rights Act. And I think that in hindsight, that decision has not aged very well, because the reasoning that was offered by Justice Roberts and others at the time was essentially that we were beyond a place in history that mandated the level of oversight and involvement around voter rights and equality, because discrimination and the discrimination that essentially caused these laws to be enacted was a thing of the past. What we are learning, what we are seeing, and what many of us already knew was that nothing could have been further from the truth. And so it will really be, in my opinion, an interesting gateway to see whether there is an opportunity to revisit Shelby on some level, to distinguish themselves from Shelby on other levels in terms of the validity of these laws. The other thing that I want to point out is that Governor Kemp used a very interesting term in weaponizing the Department of Justice. Well, at the end of the day, while not for a political agenda, the Department of Justice is the regulatory weapon of law enforcement for the United States of America, to be used essentially by the Attorney General at the behest of the president. Do we want it that way? Do we want it to be that they are the guard dogs? Perhaps not necessarily on paper, but let's face it, this is what we have seen, this is what it has been, and this is what it will be in terms of the FBI as the investigating arm and the DOJ as the enforcement arm, the litigating arm of the United States federal government. And so if it does require us to intervene on behalf of American citizens, then so be it. In terms of calling it weaponizing or whatever you want to label it, I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing, particularly when it's about equality. The last thing that I want to say is, for as happy as I am to see that there's a strategic method in terms of how they are approaching dealing with this by employing or deploying rather the Department of Justice in the courts, I think that part of what has to happen in the discussion with regards to the rhetoric, with regards to the conversation, with regards to the narrative, we have to be very clear about calling these things for what they are. And that is, I want to be very specific here, white nationalism. I'm talking about white supremacy. I'm not talking about bigotry. I'm not talking about discrimination. I'm not talking about racism in and of itself. These are all tangential and adjacent concepts, but specifically white nationalism, because white nationalism is the concept that the systems, the programs, the benefits of what it is to be American are almost exclusively reserved for white people. And so having access to them, being able to participate in them, and not being a white person is unfathomable to them. And so what we are seeing here is a strong sense of white nationalism, because at the core of our country is our democracy. And at the core of this fight is the ability to participate and access that democracy. And so I think that we have to be very, very ardent in terms of our unwillingness to relent on that narrative and calling it on its face for what it is. And I'd like to see that become part of the dialogue, because at the end of the day, the only way that we are going to combat this strong sense of pushback is to remain vigilant in our truth telling.
Charles, you hit on something so powerful that it is distinguishable. White nationalism is different, and we should be able to have a mainstream conversation about white nationalism. And it seems as if people in executive political authority, they are afraid of that conversation. But think about the irony here, brother. We're having mainstream conversations about damn aliens, and we're still not having mainstream conversations about white nationalism in the United States of America. Very compelling point.